Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about solving square root equations, cube root equations, and then a couple of word problems. So we're going to start off with the square root equations. As you can see, it looks like stuff we've already done, but it's a little different. We have the square root of, we have the x squared equals 49. Well, I want to know what just one x is. Now, if you remember, x squared means, x times x. And actually do not want to do this in this color. Let's try that again. Let's do blue. Let's do x times x. There we go. So that means, what can x be? What number can I multiply x by to get 49? Well, there are two ways you can do this. You can try to figure out and guess and check and plug in numbers. You can know what your perfect square list is and get that out. Or you can say, well, to undo an exponent of 2, we can take the square root. So over here, I'm going to say the square root of x squared, and what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other, is equal to the square root of 49. Well, the square root of x squared, the square root and the square part cancel each other out, leaving you with just x. And now we have to take the square root of 49, which is 7. And that makes sense, actually, right? That x is 7, because 7 times 7 gives you 49, so we know our x has to be 7. So this is what we're going to do this whole lesson is we're going to take the square root of a squared number or the cube root of a cube number to undo those operations and get to what number the x value is. So I'm going to do a couple of more. I'm going to do 1, 6, 7, and then that's all that's going to be for the square root equations. And then I'm going to do the cube root equations of 3, 6, and 9, and you'll do the rest. And then I'm going to do 2 of the word problems, which are just square root and cube root equations. One is a square root, one is a cube root here, square root here, and this will give you examples for the rest of them. And then you guys are going to work on those after I am done. This video shouldn't take more than about 10 minutes, and then you'll have the rest of the class to do all of the rest of the assignment. So let's go through and figure out how to do all of this. So we did one. We figured out that you have to take the root of a square in order to get you take the root to get rid of a square. So let's try this again. So we have the square root of 4/9. So I'm going to take, the x squared equals 4/9. So we're going to take the square root of that, both. And now this cancels out this. And we have now x equals the square root of 4/9. Again, we're just trying to undo that 2 exponent. To undo an exponent, you use a root. So now this is the same as saying x equals the square root of 4 over the square root of 9. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So your answer is 2/3. All right, and the last one I'm going to do with you guys over here is 7. Again, you put that x squared over here because I don't want to have a space. Equals 576. X squared equals 576. I take the root of both of them, and you say this cancels this out, leaving me with x equals the square root of 576, and the square root of 576 is 24. So, and that's the answer, 24. And again, you can check it if you want by saying 24 times 24 and put it in your calculator, and you should get 576, which means you know you got the right answer. Now the cube root, same process, except instead of using a square root, we're going to use a cube root. So I'm going to do all these 3 over here, 3, 6, and 9. So we have now the cube root of 343. So instead of taking the square root this time, we're going to take the cube root of both numbers. This will undo that 3 exponent. So we're going to take the power to the power 3. We're going to do it with the cube root. And now we're left with x, and the cube root of 343 is 7. So our answer is x equals 7. And again, you can check that by plugging it back into the original equation. 7 to the third power, if you put it into your calculator, 7, that little caret, then hit a 3, and you have 343. So we know we got the right answer. For number 6, we have the cube root of x to the third to cancel out that third power over the cube root of 64. Well, the cube root of 64 is 4. So now we have this canceled out, that, and then we have x equals 4. And again, you can check it by saying, well, is 4 cubed 64? It is. And then finally, now we have one that has a fraction. So now we're going to go over here and we're going to say we have x cubed equals 27 over 125. You take the cube root to undo the cube that we have on the x. Those cancel out to leave us with x equaling the cube root of 27 over the cube root of 125. Well, the cube root of 27 is 3, and the cube root of 125 is 5. So our answer is 3/5. So that's pretty much how it goes, guys. It's actually pretty simple. You're just going to do the opposite operation. If you are squaring something, you're going to take the square root. If you are cubing something, you're going to take the cube root. Now we're going to try to apply that into some word problems. So the first one, Mike is building a square hope chest for his daughter who is getting married. It should say married, sorry guys. This summer, the total volume of the box is 125 feet cubed. What is the dimension of the hope chest? So let's talk about volume really quickly. So remember, a volume equals base times height times width, right? We have 3 different dimensions because it's a 3D shape. However, when we're talking about a cube volume, all of those dimensions are the same. So it's saying x times x times x because they're all the same side. There's this cube, which means it's a square, which means everything is the same. So another way to put it is the cube volume is equal to x to the third power because we have x times x times x. Same thing. So now that we know what the formula is, we have the cube volume right here. It's 125 feet cubed. So I can replace that v with 125 for this one. And that's going to equal x to the third power. Well, this looks exactly like what we did up here, right, guys? We now have a formula that we can actually use to solve. So I'm going to take the cube root to undo that. Let me do it actually on another one. So let's rewrite this. 125 equals the cube root, and the cube root of 125 equals the cube root of x to the third power. This just canceled out our third power, and now we have the cube root of 125 equals x. So now we're going to figure out what one of those sides are. So I'm going to come over here and say the cube root of 125 is 5 equals x. So our final answer then is, because it asks what are the dimensions of the hope chest, it is a 5 by 5. Well, let me actually, don't forget to put your label. So it is a 5, and they said these are feet by, and when you say by, you actually use an x. 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot. Or you could have just said all sides are 5 feet. And for this purposes of all of these, they're all going to end up being squares. So you can always know that all the sides are going to be the same. So that's how you find a volume question. Now we're going to talk about area. Well, area is only a 2-dimensional one. So we have area equals length times width. And we only have 2 dimensions. Well, on a square, which is what we're talking about, a square, area equals, again, x times x because the length and width are the same. So let's read what the problem says. Sue wants to lay a square mat under her weight set to protect the floor. If the area of the mat is 81 feet squared, that sounds important, 81 feet squared, what is the length of the side? So again, we now know that it's going to be our x times x, or another way to write x times x is saying area equals x squared, because again, we're talking about a square, and so since it's a square, squares have all the same sides. So we can just label them as x, and then x times x is x squared. So now, well, I know what the area is. The area is 81 feet squared. They told us. It says the area of the mat is 81 feet squared. So with that a, I'm going to replace with 81. And we know that's going to equal our x squared, because we're trying to figure out what those side lengths are. Those x's are our side lengths. So now I'm going to say, well, I need to get rid of this squared part, so I need to do the square root in order to undo the squared part. So then I'm going to say the square root, because I have to do the same thing to both sides, of 81, and we're going to say the square root of x squared. These two cancel each other out, leaving us with the square root of 81 equaling x. So now, go back up here. We're going to say the square root of 81 is 9, and that's equal to x. So now we figure out x, each side of the mat is 9. So we're going to give our label, because remember our answer has to be in a word problem form. Each side is 9, and we're talking feet. So each side is 9 feet, and that's the answer. I forgot to box my answer up here, but I'm gonna go get it. So that's pretty much what you do. You have yards, square yards here for this one, so we're talking area. This one we have cubic inches. If we're talking cubic, we're talking volume. So we're gonna put an A here, because so we know which one we're doing. We're doing volume here. This is talking about square inches, so we're doing area. And the last one is another square miles, so we're also still doing area. So you have three more area problems and one more volume problem. Use these two problems to help you figure out how to solve them. And then also up here, you're going to complete all the rest of these. If you have any questions, the sub does have the notes. If not, send me an email or hit me up on Canvas. And I will see you guys later. Bye, guys.